Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. For a long time, I thought marriage was about endurance, about sticking things out when they got rough, about giving your partner the benefit of the doubt, about making excuses for the person you once promised forever to. But endurance isn't love. And love isn't supposed to feel like waiting for someone to decide you're worth noticing. Megan had stopped seeing me years ago. It wasn't sudden. There wasn't one defining moment where she turned cold. It was a slow erosion, 1,000 tiny moments that I had brushed off, telling myself it was stress, exhaustion, the weight of her job. But looking back, I realized those moments were adding up to something bigger, something uglier. Like how she used to text me throughout the day just to check in. Now, the only messages I got were reminders. Pick up dry cleaning, don't forget Emma's lunch, meeting ran late. The little things that showed I was on her mind, gone. Or how she used to brag about me to her friends. Now, when I was in the same room as them, I was the punchline. It started as small digs. He's been so into his little coding projects lately. Jake made dinner again tonight. Pasta again. He's trying, though. Work from home life must be nice. I swear, sometimes I think he spends half the day napping. Always followed by a laugh. Like it was funny. I would force a chuckle, play along, tell myself it wasn't a big deal, that she was just joking. But jokes are only funny when they don't cut you open. It was at a family gathering that I realized how much I had let this go unchecked. Her parents had invited us over for dinner. One of those painfully formal meals where her father talked about his investments and her mother dropped hints about when we were going to upgrade to a bigger house. I was never comfortable at these things, but I showed up because that's what a husband does. The conversation had shifted to careers when her mother turned to me. "And how's work going, Jake?" Before I could answer, Megan smirked over her wine glass. "Oh, he sits at his desk, codes a little, watches a few informational YouTube videos." Her father chuckled. "Well, as long as it keeps the bills paid." Megan sighed dramatically. Barely. Laughter. Light, careless. Like it wasn't a knife sliding between my ribs. I set my fork down slowly. "That's funny, because last I checked, my little coding projects pay for half of everything you enjoy." Silence. Megan's smirk faltered for just a second before she recovered, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive." I pushed my chair back. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need some air." I didn't wait for anyone to respond. I walked out to the backyard, inhaling deeply. The air was crisp, cold enough to sting my lungs. I needed it. Needed something sharp, something real, something to remind me that I wasn't crazy for feeling like I was drowning. A few minutes later, I heard the patio door slide open. Megan stepped outside, wrapping her arms around herself. What was that about? I exhaled, looking out into the yard. "What do you think?" She sighed. "Jake, it was a joke. You know how my family is." I turned to face her. "No, Megan, I know how you are." Her brows pulled together. "What's that supposed to mean?" I let out a humorless laugh. "It means I've let this go on for too long. You talk about me like I'm some burden you have to carry. Like I'm not your husband, just some roommate who happens to split the bills." Her lips pressed together. "That's not fair." I stepped closer. "What's not fair is being treated like I don't matter. Like my work, my time, my existence is just some footnote in your life." She huffed, crossing her arms. "You're overreacting." I nodded slowly, swallowing down the lump in my throat. "Right. That's what you always say." I walked past her, heading toward the front of the house. "Where are you going?" she called after me. I didn't stop. "Home." I heard her scoff, but she didn't follow me. She didn't even try. And that told me everything I needed to know. The night after Megan humiliated me at dinner, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. She had come home an hour after I did, barely acknowledging me before heading straight upstairs. No apology. No attempt to smooth things over. Just silence. As if I had been the one to overstep. As if my reaction had been the problem instead of the years of disrespect that led up to it. I wanted to let it go. That's what I had always done. Swallowed my pride. Told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But the more I replayed the evening in my head, the more I realized something. I wasn't just angry. I was done. The next morning, I got up early and made breakfast for Emma. Megan had already left. Another early meeting that I had stopped asking about months ago. As I packed Emma's lunch, she sat at the counter swinging her legs. "Daddy, why was Mommy mad last night?" I paused, my hands tightening around the sandwich bag. "What do you mean?" She looked down, fiddling with the hem of her shirt. "She was talking to Grandma on the phone before bed. She said you embarrassed her." I let out a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. "I just told her something she didn't want to hear, sweetheart." Emma frowned. "But she embarrasses you sometimes too, right?" My heart clenched. Kids see everything, even when you think they don't. I forced a small smile, ruffling her hair. "Don't worry about that, okay? It's grown-up stuff." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. That evening, I had plans with some friends. Nothing big, just a few of us meeting at a bar downtown, catching up. I almost canceled. Megan always made a habit of acting annoyed when I made plans without her, as if my free time was something that needed her approval. But this time, I didn't care. When I got to the bar, David, my oldest friend, clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Look who finally decided to escape the house." I smirked, shaking my head. "It's been a while." We grabbed drinks and found a table. The night was easy, filled with laughter and stories that reminded me of who I used to be before my life became about tiptoeing around Megan's moods. But then the conversation shifted. David leaned back in his chair, studying me. "So, how's Megan?" I shrugged. "She's fine." He exchanged a look with the others. "That bad, huh?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Jake, we've seen how she talks to you. How she treats you. It's not right." I let out a humorless chuckle. "You guys are making a big deal out of nothing." David gave me a knowing look. "Am I?" I opened my mouth to respond, but he kept going. "Last time we all got together, she corrected you on how you ordered your drink. Before that, she rolled her eyes when you told us about your job. And don't even get me started on the time she called you boring in front of half the party." My jaw tightened. I had forgotten about that one, probably because I had wanted to. David leaned forward. "I get it, man. You love her. You don't want to see it. But at some point, you got to ask yourself, is this what you deserve?" I looked down at my glass, my grip tightening. I thought about how Megan used to be. The way she smiled at me when I walked into her room. The way she used to laugh at my jokes instead of roll her eyes. But that Megan didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. When I got home, Megan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when I walked in. "Oh, you actually went out." I set my keys on the counter. "Yeah, I did." She raised an eyebrow. "A little late for a guy's night, don't you think?" I let out a slow breath, turning to face her. "Why do you do that?" She blinked. "Do what?" I gestured toward her. "That. The little digs. The constant comments." She scoffed, sitting up straighter. "Oh, come on, Jake. Don't be so dramatic." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm serious. Do you even like me anymore?" She stilled. I waited. She looked away, exhaling sharply. "This is ridiculous." I felt something inside me crack. "Megan." My voice was quieter now. "Just be honest." She hesitated. Then, with a voice so low I barely heard it, she said, "I don't know." The words knocked the breath from my lungs. I had expected an argument, a fight, an excuse. But not this. She didn't even try to lie. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding. "Okay." She shifted, suddenly uneasy. "Jake." I turned, walking toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" she called. I didn't stop. To bed. That night, as I lay in the darkness, I realized something. I had spent years convincing myself that if I just tried harder, if I was more patient, more understanding, things would get better. But Megan had already given up on us. And now so had I. The shift between Megan and me wasn't dramatic. There was no explosive fight, no grand confrontation. Just a slow, widening space between us. An unspoken understanding that whatever had been holding our marriage together had frayed beyond repair. She still came home late, still barely acknowledged me when she did. I stopped asking where she had been. One evening, after putting Emma to bed, I walked past our bedroom and noticed Megan's suitcase in the corner. She had mentioned a work trip to Chicago that weekend. One of the many business trips she always took without hesitation. But something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the way she barely looked at me when she told me, or how she had been on her phone more than usual, always turning the screen away when I walked by. I wasn't the jealous type. I never had been. But suspicion is a funny thing. Once it creeps in, it doesn't let go. The next day, while Megan was at work, I decided to clean the house. Not because I had to, but because my mind was restless. I needed to do something to keep my hands busy while my thoughts raced. That's when I found it. A small, sleek black box tucked in the back of her dresser drawer. My heart pounded as I pulled it out, my fingers hesitating over the smooth edges. A part of me already knew what I was about to see. Inside was a watch. Not mine. Not even close to my style. It was expensive. Far too expensive for a casual purchase. And it wasn't a gift for me. I let out a slow breath, the weight of the realization settling over me like a lead blanket. Megan wasn't just checking out of our marriage. She was giving her attention, her time, her affection to someone else. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the box, my mind spinning. Was it someone from work? Someone she met while traveling? Did it even matter? I thought back to every time she had dismissed me, every time she had made me feel small. She wasn't just drifting away. She was pushing me away. I swallowed hard and set the box back exactly where I found it. I needed proof. That night, Megan barely spoke during dinner. Emma chatted happily about school, completely unaware of the tension in the air. I watched Megan, studying the way she avoided eye contact, the way she kept her phone close to her hand. "Everything set for your trip?" I asked casually. She glanced up, surprised. "Yeah, early flight." I nodded. "You excited?" She shrugged. "It's just work, Jake." I forced a smile. "Right." After dinner, I waited until she was in the shower before grabbing her laptop from the office. Megan had always been careful with passwords, but I knew her habits. Knew that she reused certain combinations. It took 3 tries before I got in. I clicked into her emails, scrolling past the usual work notifications. And then I found them. A thread between her and someone named Ryan. "Megan, I can't wait for this weekend. Just you and me, no distractions." Ryan, "Same. That place looks amazing." "Megan, you're going to love it." I told Jake it's a work trip. He doesn't suspect a thing. I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. This wasn't some emotional distance. This wasn't just neglect. This was intentional. She had looked me in the eye and lied, knowing full well what she was planning. I copied the emails, sending them to myself. Then I checked her calendar. No meetings in Chicago. No work obligations. Just a weekend with him. I shut the laptop and placed it back exactly where I found it. Megan came downstairs a few minutes later, towel wrapped around her head, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I watched her. For years, I had been patient. I had given her the benefit of the doubt. But now, there was no doubt left. She had betrayed me, and she had no idea that I knew. I barely slept that night. The weight of what I had discovered pressed down on me like a vice, making it impossible to rest. Megan slept soundly beside me, completely unaware that the foundation of her carefully curated double life was beginning to crack. I listened to her slow, steady breathing and felt nothing but cold detachment. The old version of me, the man who ignored the warning signs, who made excuses for her, was gone. The moment I saw those messages, something inside me shifted. If she thought she could lie to my face, sneak around behind my back, and come home like nothing had happened, she was going to learn just how wrong she was. By morning, I had a plan. Megan moved through her usual routine, sipping coffee at the kitchen counter while scrolling through her phone. I watched her, the same way a hunter watches prey. She glanced up and caught me staring. "What?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled faintly. "Nothing. Just thinking about how lucky I am." Her lips parted slightly before she gave a small, distracted smile. "That's sweet." She returned to her phone. If she only knew. Later that day, while she was at work, I got to work myself. Step 1. Secure the finances. Megan and I had a joint account, but I had my own savings too, one she never paid much attention to. Over the years, I had built it up quietly, just in case. Now, I transferred half of our joint savings into that account. My half. She wouldn't even notice until it was too late. Step 2. Gather the evidence. I already had the emails. Now I needed more. I checked our phone records. Her number had been in frequent contact with an unknown number at odd hours. I ran it through a reverse search. Ryan. That confirmed it. Next, I installed a small GPS tracker under her car. It was a simple device, easily hidden, and linked to an app on my phone. This would tell me exactly where she went when she left for her business trip. Step 3. The final move. I knew Megan cared about two things: her image and control. Taking both away from her would destroy her. I logged into her email. Megan wasn't as tech-savvy as she liked to pretend. She had saved her login information on our shared computer. A foolish mistake for someone who thought she was too smart to get caught. I scheduled an email. Subject: clearing up some confusion. Recipients: her boss, colleagues, close friends, and family. Message: hey everyone, just wanted to clear up any confusion. Megan was never in Chicago for work. She was spending the weekend with her secret boyfriend instead. Thought you'd all like to know. I attached screenshots of her messages with Ryan, the Airbnb receipt, and the call logs. Then I scheduled it to send at 7 a.m. on Monday, just in time for the start of the work week. By the time she even realized what had happened, it would be too late to stop it. I stared at the screen for a moment, my heart pounding. Then I clicked confirm. It was done. That evening, Megan came home in a good mood. She hummed to herself while making tea, glancing at me with a smile. You seem relaxed, she said. I shrugged, just feeling at peace. She smirked. Well, that's good. You should take it easy more. I almost laughed. She really thought she had me fooled. As we sat down to dinner, she made casual conversation, asking about my day, talking about how excited she was for the Chicago trip. I nodded along, never letting my mask slip. Then, just as she was finishing her meal, I said, hey, you should text me when you land, just so I know you're safe. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second before nodding. Of course. I always do. No, she didn't. And after this weekend, she never would again. That night, as she packed, I pretended to be the same clueless, trusting husband she had been lying to for months. I even kissed her goodbye in the morning, watching as she wheeled her suitcase to her car, smiling at me over her shoulder. Love you, she said. I smiled back. I know. She drove away, and I pulled out my phone, opening the GPS app. She wasn't heading to the airport. She was driving across town, straight to Ryan. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone. I had known this would happen. I had prepared for it. But seeing the confirmation in real time still sent a slow burn of anger through my veins. I didn't text her, didn't call. By the time she returned, she wouldn't have a husband, a home, or a reputation left to cling to. She had spent months lying to me. Now, it was my turn to let her believe everything was fine. Until it wasn't. Megan had no idea that while she was settling in her weekend getaway with Ryan, I was tracking her every move. The GPS showed her arriving in an upscale neighborhood, a luxury Airbnb rental. Not the airport, not a hotel booked through her company, just a private little escape for two. I watched the map update in real time, following her every turn until she finally stopped. Then nothing. It was a strange feeling, seeing the proof unfold so clearly, yet feeling almost nothing. I'd already done my grieving. The moment I read those messages, I knew our marriage had been over long before now. This was just confirmation. I spent the weekend preparing. I packed my things, made arrangements for Emma to stay with my sister for a few days, and finalized my plan. Then I waited. Monday morning arrived, and with it, the email I had scheduled. I didn't need to be there to witness the explosion. I knew exactly what would happen. Megan would wake up to dozens of missed calls, texts from confused friends, colleagues, and probably her boss. She'd open her inbox and see the nightmare waiting for her. The screenshots, the receipts, the cold, undeniable truth that her secrets were now public knowledge. I had played my role perfectly, silent, unsuspecting, patient. Now, it was her turn to panic. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Megan. I let it ring. Then again, and again. By the fourth call, I finally answered. Jake. Her voice was breathless, frantic. What the hell did you do? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling calmly. Morning to you too. Don't play games with me, she snapped. You hacked my email? I smirked. Let's not act like you're above deception, Megan. She sucked in a breath. Do you have any idea what you've done? My boss saw that email. My clients saw it. You lie, Megan. To me, to everyone. I just made sure the truth came out. There was silence on the other end. For the first time, she had nothing to say, Then her voice dropped. You humiliated me. I chuckled, but there was no humor in it. No, Megan. You humiliated yourself. She let out a shaky breath. Jake, I didn't let her finish. Save it. I don't care why you did it. I don't care about your excuses. I pack my things. Emma is with my sister. When you get home, I won't be there. Her breath hitched. You're leaving? I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. No, Megan. You lost me. Silence stretched between us. Then, her voice broke. Jake, please. Let's talk. I clenched my jaw. I had waited for her to talk for years. Now it was too late. Goodbye, Megan. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone, waiting for the regret to settle in. It never did. Instead, a strange, unfamiliar feeling washed over me. Freedom. Megan had spent so much time treating me like I was invisible, like my feelings didn't matter. Now, she was the one left alone, watching everything she had built crumble around her. I grabbed my bag, walked outside, and stepped into the first day of the rest of my life. I had imagined what it would feel like to leave Megan, to walk away from the life I had spent years trying to hold together. I expected guilt, maybe even a lingering sadness. But as I drove away from our house for the last time, all I felt was relief. A weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. Megan, on the other hand, was unraveling. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, voicemails. At first, they were filled with rage. Megan, how dare you do this to me? You have ruined everything. Answer me, Jake. Then they turned to bargaining. We can fix this. Please, let's talk. You don't have to do this. Think about Emma. Just give me a chance to explain. I ignored every single one. Vanessa, my lawyer, had already begun the legal process. Megan would be served with divorce papers in a matter of days. I had spent years bending to her will, swallowing my pride, pretending I didn't notice the way she belittled me, the way she had slowly chipped away at my confidence. Not anymore. That afternoon, I checked into a temporary apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but enough to clear my head. Emma was staying with my sister, shielded from the chaos that was sure to unfold once Megan realized I wasn't coming back. It didn't take long. At exactly 7 p.m., my phone lit up with a call from Vanessa. I picked up immediately. She called me, Vanessa said without preamble. Twice. I smirked. Let me guess. She's playing the victim? Vanessa chuckled. Oh, absolutely. First, she was furious, talking about how you publicly humiliated her and how she might pursue legal action against you for defamation. I laughed. Defamation? She literally did the things I exposed. Exactly, which is why that won't go anywhere. She knows it too. But then, about an hour later, she called back. I leaned forward, and Vanessa sighed. She's panicking, Jake. She realizes she's losing control. She wants to meet. I scoffed. Not happening. She said she's willing to negotiate. I shook my head. Vanessa, I don't need to negotiate. She has nothing on me. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who lied. What could she possibly offer? There was a pause on the line before Vanessa spoke. She wants you to reconsider the financial split. I let out a slow breath. Of course, Megan had always thought she was untouchable, that she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. Now that her perfect world was crashing down, she was realizing just how much she stood to lose. She's scared, Vanessa continued. Her job is in jeopardy. Her firm won't fire her outright, but after that email, she's lost all credibility. Clients don't trust someone who lies that easily. I smiled. Good. Jake, listen. We can drag this out in court, or we can end it fast. If you agree to meet, you might be able to get exactly what you want without a drawn-out battle. I ran a hand through my hair. I didn't want to see Megan. I had spent years waiting for her to acknowledge me, to treat me as an equal. Now, the thought of sitting across from her made my stomach turn. But this wasn't about emotions. This was about strategy. I exhaled. Fine. Set it up. The next afternoon, I met Megan at Vanessa's office. While I walked into the conference room, she was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair, hands clasped tightly together. She looked different, less composed, more frantic. For the first time in years, she didn't look in control. I sat across from her, my face unreadable. She exhaled sharply. Jake. I didn't respond. I just waited. She licked her lips, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. I know you're angry. I tilted my head. Angry? No. I'm done. She flinched slightly, then forced a weak smile. Look, I messed up. I raised an eyebrow. Messed up. She swallowed. I lost sight of what we had. I was stupid. I leaned back. And now that you're facing real consequences, you suddenly care? She blinked rapidly. That's not fair. I let out a sharp laugh. Not fair? Megan, you spent months lying to me. Treated me like I was nothing. And now what? Now you want to make a deal? She clenched her jaw. Jake, I know. I interrupted. You don't get to talk your way out of this. I'm not here to listen to excuses. I'm here to finalize the end of this joke of a marriage. She inhaled sharply, blinking back what might have been tears. For a moment, I thought she might actually feel something. But then, just like that, she squared her shoulders, her usual mask slipping back into place. Her voice hardened. I want a fair settlement. I met her gaze, unflinching. You don't get to decide what's fair anymore. She looked at Vanessa, desperate. I contributed more financially. I deserve something. Vanessa smirked. Megan, legally, Jake has the upper hand. You cheated. He has proof. If this goes to court, you'll walk away with far less than what he's offering now. Megan's nostrils flared. She opened her mouth to argue, but hesitated. She knew she was backed into a corner. I leaned forward slightly. Sign the papers, Megan. Walk away with what little dignity you have left. She stared at the documents in front of her. I saw the moment she realized she had lost. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the pen. She hesitated once more, looking at me, searching for something, maybe hope, maybe regret. I gave her nothing. She signed, and just like that, it was over. She set the pen down, looking defeated. Is this what you wanted? She whispered. I stood, gathering my things. What I wanted was a wife who respected me. Since that wasn't an option, I'll take my freedom. I walked out without looking back. For the first time in years, Megan had to sit in silence and face the consequences of her actions. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one suffering. Divorcing Megan was a formality. The real battle had been fought the moment I exposed her, when she realized she wasn't untouchable, when she finally understood that I wasn't going to be her safety net anymore. But there were still loose ends to tie up, and I wasn't about to let her walk away without paying the price for what she had done. A week after she signed the papers, Vanessa scheduled the first official legal meeting to finalize everything. Megan had been quiet since then. No texts, no calls, no last-ditch attempts to manipulate me. I suspected it was because she was scrambling behind the scenes, trying to salvage her reputation, trying to convince herself she could still control the outcome. She couldn't. The meeting was held in a conference room at Vanessa's firm. I arrived early, feeling more confident than I had in years. I no longer carried the weight of trying to fix something that had already fallen apart. I had spent years bending for Megan, making myself smaller so she could shine. Not anymore. Megan arrived exactly on time, her lawyer, Carter, trailing behind her. She looked different, tired, worn down. The usual arrogance in her eyes was dimmed, replaced with something that almost looked like uncertainty. Good. She sat down across from me, her eyes flicking up to meet mine. Jake. I didn't respond. Carter cleared his throat, placing a thick folder on the table. Let's get started. Vanessa leaned forward, completely unbothered. We have a clear case. The division of assets has already been settled. Jake has taken his half of the finances, and Megan will retain her own earnings. Custody arrangements for Emma remain unchanged. Jake will have primary custody, with Megan receiving visitation. Megan stiffened. I want equal custody. Vanessa didn't even blink. That's not happening. Carter sighed. Megan has a right to be involved in her daughter's life. I finally spoke, and she will be. But let's be honest, Megan hasn't been involved for years. She chose work over family. She chose someone else over me. And I refuse to let Emma grow up thinking that kind of neglect is normal. Megan's jaw clenched. I love my daughter. I met her gaze. Then prove it. Show up for her. Put her first. But don't expect me to rewrite history just because you suddenly want to be a good mother. She looked away. Carter sighed again. Fine. We'll agree to the custody arrangement. But Megan wants to ensure she receives a fair settlement. Vanessa scoffed. She already has. She lost the right to demand anything else when she broke her vows. Megan's lips pressed into a thin line. Jake, I held up a hand. No, you don't get to ask me for anything. Not after everything. Her eyes searched mine, looking for any trace of the man who used to love her. The man who would have done anything to make her happy. That man didn't exist anymore. Carter shifted in his seat. Are we in agreement? Vanessa nodded. We are. Megan hesitated for a second longer. Then, with a resigned sigh, she nodded too. It was done. The papers were signed. The legal battle ended before it could even begin. Megan had lost. Not just me, not just our marriage, but the power she had spent years holding over me. As we stood to leave, Megan spoke one last time. Jake, do you really hate me? I exhaled, studying her. Hate? No. I had spent too much time caring about her to hate her. But I felt nothing for her anymore, and that was worse. I don't hate you, Megan, I said calmly. I just don't care anymore. She flinched, like the words had cut deeper than anything else I had said. I walked out without another word, stepping into a world that no longer revolved around her. And for the first time in years, I was free. I woke up to silence. No distant sound of Megan's blow dryer in the bathroom. No heels clicking against the hardwood as she rushed out the door. No passive-aggressive sighs as she scrolled through her phone, annoyed by my very existence. Just peace. For the first time in years, I was waking up alone, and it wasn't loneliness I felt. It was freedom. The past few weeks had been a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and untangling my life from Megan's. Now, I was in my own apartment, a modest two-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decision was something I chose for myself, without worrying about whether Megan would approve. I rolled out of bed and stretched, my body still adjusting to the unfamiliar sensation of not carrying the weight of a failing marriage. I checked my phone. No text from Megan. No missed calls. She had finally stopped trying to get in touch, and that silence was its own kind of victory. Emma was coming over that afternoon. That was the one thing Megan hadn't fought me on. Maybe she knew she wouldn't win, or maybe, deep down, she realized she had never been the present parent. Either way, she had accepted our custody arrangement without a fight. I spent the morning setting up Emma's room. I wanted it to feel like home to her, not just some weekend visit. Fresh sheets, new decorations, even a few of her favorite stuffed animals that I had taken from the house before I left. By the time I finished, my phone buzzed. Vanessa. I answered immediately. Tell me you're calling with good news. She laughed. I am. Megan officially signed the last of the paperwork this morning. The divorce is finalized. It's over, Jake. I let out a slow breath, a weight lifting from my chest. It's over. She didn't contest anything. Didn't try to stall. She's finally accepted it, I said, shaking my head. Took her long enough. Vanessa paused. You okay? I thought about it for a second. The anger, the bitterness, they weren't gone, but they didn't control me anymore. I had spent so much time reacting to Megan, letting her dictate my emotions, my worth. Now I have my life back. Yeah, I said, smiling. I am okay. Vanessa chuckled. Good. Now go enjoy it. I hung up, staring out the window at the city below. A fresh start. A clean slate. For the first time in a long time, my future was mine to decide. That afternoon, I picked up Emma from school. She ran into my arms the moment she saw me, wrapping her little arms around my neck. Daddy, I missed you. I held her tight, closing my eyes. I missed you too, sweetheart. As we drove home, she chattered excitedly about her day, completely unfazed by the changes happening around her. Kids are resilient like that. They don't dwell on the past. They just keep moving forward. When we got to the apartment, she gasped. Daddy, my room looks so cool. I grinned, watching her run inside, already making herself at home. This was what mattered. Not the betrayal, not the revenge, not Megan's downfall. Just this, Emma and I. A new life. A better one. And as I watched her curl up on the bed with a book, completely at peace, I realized something. Leaving Megan wasn't just the best decision I had ever made. It was the decision that saved me. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.